Good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Thanks for joining me. It's a Friday of an amazing week full of all kinds of things, but we're in John chapter 16. I'm going to be going very slowly through some verses as we look at what Jesus was trying to tell us, even about things that are happening right now. Let's talk about the counselor he has sent us, and that's the Holy Spirit. When we left Jesus yesterday, I blew through this passage, the first part of chapter 16. We're going to come back and pick apart some sections of it because he left us in chapter 15 saying, when the counselor comes, the one I will send you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father, he will testify about me. You also will testify because you have been with me from the beginning. Now let me ask you a question. Did the testimony about Jesus from the Holy Spirit end with these disciples? Or is the Holy Spirit still speaking about Jesus in the hearts of every believer that he enters? I believe the latter is true. I don't think there was a time where he stopped speaking just when the New Testament was completed. I believe the Holy Spirit has been speaking ever since. And I think he's speaking loudly and clearly today about some things going on. Now, Jesus warned his disciples about something that I think we should echo today. We should echo this warning because we're seeing it happen all over the world today. It's the new level of persecution. As I saw in a Peanuts cartoon that was published here again recently, Linus was kind of a little bit disturbed because his toast had been burnt. And I forget which character, I think it's Lucy or whatever, said, well, just throw it outside. The birds don't care if the toast is burnt. And so Linus throws the piece of toast outside. And the bird that comes by to look at it is, of course, Woodstock. Woodstock sniffs the piece of toast, looks at it, it's burnt, and rears back and, of course, starts chirping and kicks the toast. Linus is watching all this through the window, and to say that the birds don't know the difference in burnt toast, well, he says, apparently some birds do. Do you know when you're being thrown a piece of burnt toast? Think about what's being told to us today. Property won't matter for you. You'll own nothing and be happy. And look, if you'll just surrender all your rights and your privileges to this new world order that's coming, it'll be better for all of us. You won't own everything. A handful of us elites will just be in control of it all, and we'll stroke you just enough to make everybody happy. It's going to be wonderful. But if you don't line up with our woke ideology, you can't be happy. And we'll have systems in place, these systems already operating, by the way, that will allow us to cancel you, cut you off, take you away from all reasonable society if you don't toe the line. And in this particular case, it's happening all over the world. And it's happening in ways that are so amazing because it's even in our systems of what we think is a free system of capitalism and free enterprise. The Epoch Times this past week had an article in the opinion section entitled "Woke Capitalism is a Monopoly Game," where within the article it says woke capitalism has become a monopoly game just as non-woke individuals are canceled from civic life, so too are non-woke companies canceled from the economy, leaving the spoils to the woke. It's a warfare that's taking place, and many of you have already been casualties of that warfare. If you take your Christian faith with you into the workplace, into your school, into your neighborhood, and you express it in any way, shape, or form, you may be labeled and then canceled and cut off and told that you can't even speak to certain people. I mean, you immediately have the rug pulled out from under you. And if you think I'm exaggerating this, just watch. In fact, if you want to see how woke capitalism works, just ask a guy named Mike Lindell at the My Pillow Company. Listen, if you are one of those who dares to express any kind of conservative Christian values in a way that displeases us, the elite in charge, then we will make sure even your banks will call you up and say, you can't keep your money here anymore. We're kicking you out because we don't like your point of view. It's happened with so many. I have friends, and I'm not talking about radical preachers like I guess maybe I'm a radical preacher that makes a lot of opinions public, but for some of you that just want to have a simple viewpoint of the world that is centered around a Christian worldview, you may find your state agency or even your corporation that you work for not pleased with your viewpoints, and they will fire you. I literally, as I'm looking at the list now know dozens of people who this has already happened to, and I'm not talking about in communist China. I'm talking about in the United States of America. Now listen to how Jesus put this at the beginning of chapter 16. He says, I've told you these things to keep you from stumbling. Well, why would we stumble? We'll stumble when we're persecuted and can't seem to fit this into our mind. Why are people treating me badly for doing good or badly for just having an opinion that's different from theirs? Here's what Jesus says they'll do. They will ban you from the synagogues. In fact, a time is coming when anyone who kills you will think he's offering a service to God. And they will do these things because they haven't known the Father or me. That time not only came to the first century disciples, it has echoed down through history in various forms. And in the end time apostasy in which we live, it is coming to the forefront and making itself even more and more acceptable. In other words, it's very acceptable for you to publicly now downgrade and persecute Christians and tell people how bad they are for the beliefs they hold. Now listen to what Jesus was saying about some of this. M.O. Owens writes, the hardest kind of opposition to face is persecution for doing what is right. If we do wrong and suffer for it, we know we're receiving what we deserve. But if we follow our highest convictions and then suffer, we may become cynical or just tempted to give up. Now, Jesus anticipated the shock his death would be to the disciples. He knew they might conclude that God did not care or was unable to save him, so he tried to prepare them for his death. And one of the things that he talks about here is what they were going to face from their most cherished institutions, like the synagogue they grew up in. The disciples were Jews by birth, he goes on and writes, and by training. The synagogue was to them the source of spiritual knowledge and the center of worship. To be expelled from it was unthinkable. But Jesus warned his disciples that those who persecuted them would think they were serving God. One of the saddest aspects of persecution is that it is often carried on in the name of God. It is, however, a result of ignorance, as he said in verse 3. People who have not experienced the love of God or do not know Christ are likely to react with intolerance and even violence when confronted by the truth. While Jesus was with the disciples, he bore the brunt of his enemies' attacks. Thus, such a warning was unnecessary earlier, but now with his departure, his enemies would begin to persecute the disciples. He did not want them to be taken by surprise, but to be prepared to face opposition with courage. As Jesus told his disciples he was leaving, he was giving this message about the Counselor, about the Holy Spirit, to encourage their hearts. I may physically be going away from you, but I'm literally coming back to live inside of you. Therefore, when the world is persecuting you, they're really persecuting me. But that means I'll be with you to the very end of the age. I'll be in you. I'll be getting you through it. Oh my goodness. He said in verse 4, I have told you these things so that when their time comes, you will remember I told them to you. Now, I didn't tell you these things from the beginning because, of course, I was with you. But now that I am going away to him who sent me, now's the time. Now, that he has given us this kind of instruction is so important for us in the 21st century because we are seeing the enemies of Christ just coalesce around the world. They see especially conservative Christianity as an enemy to the Great Reset and to this new world order they're trying to bring upon us. If you think it's some kind of conspiracy theory, please don't listen to what I've got to say. Just listen to them. They're the ones writing the books, coming out of Davos, the Great Reset. Why do they have the Chinese Communist Party leader speaking? at the World Economic Forum? Why are these handfuls of people getting together and greedily deciding how they are going to control your very lives? And what must be done to these Christians who resist? It's beyond scary, my friends, to see what's happening to our world, and the fact that people who resist those kind of leaders are the ones that end up losing jobs, losing position, having their own possessions confiscated from them, and in the worst case scenarios, being placed in concentration and work camps, having their organs harvested as they do in China, and being placed in a position of, I wouldn't even say second class, almost no class citizenship. You exist just to serve the state, and what you do is valuable to the state as long as you can function in some way. Maybe put some tiny piece stand in the manufacturing line and put some tiny piece onto an item that we're going to sell to keep up our economic power. But beyond that, you mean nothing to us as a state. If we can't re-educate you enough so that you follow the party line, then you must be able to produce economically. And ultimately, if you can't do that, you're worthless, you're good for nothing, and we don't need you for anything except maybe one of your bodily organs that we can put into one of our minions who might need a transplant. That's a pretty sad state of the world that we're coming to. But right now, there are literally millions and millions of people living under the extreme versions of that kind of economy, and we're being told that's what needs to come to the rest of us. Give me a break, friends. Persecution isn't coming. Persecution is here. It's just multiplying. How are you going to survive it? How are we going to survive it? Well, the same way the disciples were going to survive it, by the Holy Spirit in your heart and in your life. Jesus said down in verse 12, I still have many things to tell you, but you can't bear them now. But when the Spirit of truth, yes, that's capital S, that means the Holy Spirit. When the Spirit of truth comes, He will guide you into all truth. So do you believe the Holy Spirit stopped guiding after the first century, after the Bible was written, after the first generation of the apostles? Has He been silent ever since? Oh no, I believe that Holy Spirit is active, alive today in every believer. He's guiding, He's helping, He's going to see us through, and He's going to take us up to the glorious return of Jesus Christ when He says He's going to come back for His own. I go to prepare a place for you, Jesus said, and if I go, I will come again to receive you unto myself. How will He know which of you belongs to Him? Is there some kind of stamp on your forehead? Is there a flag you'll be waving? How does He know who belongs to Him? He knows only by the fact that His Holy Spirit is already in you. He doesn't have to go off and check your name off of a list and say, who's mine? Who's mine? No. He already knows because He's in you by the presence and the power of His Holy Spirit. That's the Spirit that will see you through until Jesus comes. Thanks for spending some time on this Friday with me today. We're going to talk more about the ministry of the Holy Spirit next week and wake up in the Word. In the meantime, you just have a great weekend. Find a group of God's people to worship with this Lord's Day and get stronger and stronger in Him. You'll be glad that you did. I'll see you then. God bless you.